Running back the Texans 2024 offense is something Texan fans don't want to see, probably not even talk about, but let's revisit what impacted Stroud's ability and in what ways did CJ Stroud let the offense down.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
From H-Town to your town, this one is for Texan fans all around. I am your Locked On Texans host, credential media member, and Texans football analyst, John Hickman. Thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. Coffee, your morning tea, whatever it is. Thank you for making us number one on your list here on the Locked On Texans podcast, and for being in every day or being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, what am I talking about? Well, Dameon Pierce's path to success looks like what? Revamping this offense, making it a little bit more simpler, especially in year one, which I also think is a benefit for everybody on the offensive side of the ball. Year one is typically where you see quarterbacks, offensive coordinators have the opportunity to kind of attack defenses from a place of the unknown. The tendencies are not necessarily there. So you look at Dameon Pierce's path to success, that plays a role. Going into year 4 in the NFL, that'll play a role as well. And the revamping, again, of this offense and offensive line coaching, that will play a role. So what does Dameon Pierce's path to success look like? CJ Stroud was failed by the offense in 2024, especially in the first half of the season. But then he also started to pick up some bad tendencies, and he started to fail the offense. Things got to a place where I believe he was incredibly uncomfortable, and that impacted the mechanics of CJ Stroud, his throws, his base, and a lot of things that led to overthrows, underthrows, and not necessarily the CJ Stroud we have come to know from the 2023 season. And by the way, I wouldn't classify 2024 as a sophomore slump when the guy still threw over 4,000 yards and still threw over 20 touchdowns. Was it a slump? No. Was it a slight disappointment? That is where I would say yes to. But before we look at revisiting the 2024 season, I want to give you guys some encouraging words from the new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, something he spoke about a couple of months ago.
First-time coordinator, to answer your second part of the question. Really excited to get an opportunity to evolve this scheme and put, it's not going to be my spin. It's going to be what's best for our players, and it's always going to be what's best for our players. No, we're not pounding a square peg into a round hole. It's going to be based on the strengths of our quarterback, the players, and the guys on this team. So that's what it will always be, designed around.
Revisiting some of the bad in 2024. Texans were 10th in the NFL in drop passes. Not good. Stroud was sacked over 50 times in 2024, third most in the NFL. Texans offensive line, up and down play, injuries they had to deal with throughout the year. They ranked 22nd in pass block win rate at 58%. Texans ranked 28th in EPA per play on first and second down, which is where we really saw this offense just completely discombobulated throughout 2024. And for more context, they were ranked 12th in 2023, CJ Stroud's and Bobby Slowik first year. Again, first year play call, I think there's going to be a benefit for the Houston Texans because of the unknown and being able to attack defenses from that perspective. That said, with the internal issues surrounding the offense, inept play calling, CJ Stroud struggles at times. We're on him a little bit. And that's something I mentioned on this show before. Before I continue, this show will not be about disrespecting CJ Stroud, the man or the person or the player. I'm a huge fan of CJ Stroud. I'm more of a fan of CJ Stroud for what he stands for off the field. This is strictly talking about quarterback play. Stroud's inefficiency from a clean pocket saw a noticeable decline. His percentile ranking dropped from the 90th to the 26th percentile, and his big-time throw rate in clean pockets decreased from 4.3% to 3%. He also struggled on first and second down, sitting in the 41st percentile of passers in terms of early down passing grades compared to 73rd his rookie season. I cannot underestimate how both teams both team defenses making adjustments and missing Nico Collins for five games hurt CJ Stroud and his best attribute as a quarterback, and that's the deep ball. Once Nico Collins was off the field, then you saw teams kind of adjust to that, and that really hurt the Houston Texans offense. Stroud's year-to-year completion percentage on passes 20 yards or more down the field, 58.5% to 32.4%, and the turnover-worthy play rates 1.4% jumped up to nearly 8%. For more context, before Nico Collins' injuries, CJ Stroud and that offense averaged 272 passing yards per game. The 5 games without Nico, that dropped to 197 yards per game. And I want to add that Houston looked at their formula and said, we've got to double it. We've got to double it. We've got to. What does doubling that formula look like for the Houston Texans? Well, when Nico was out there, well, what was Nico? The big body, physical receiver that made it incredibly difficult for DBs alike, small or big, because of his frame, because of his running ability, because of his ability in open field in terms of getting to the spot where he needs to be. We have a quarterback that can find him. And even on some of the more maybe difficult throws, because we saw Nico Collins catch some of these difficult throws. I can think of the third down catch. I believe it was maybe the Colts game to open up the year where the Houston Texans were up by 2 points and they needed to finish that drive off so the Colts won't get the ball again. Nico Collins with an amazing catch. The Houston Texans compiled all of that and said, we got to double it. We're going to go draft Jaden Higgins, big physical, gifted receiver that can outjump everybody, that can outbody everybody on the field, that can make those plays down the field consistently, that if all works out can be a 15, 16, 17 yards per catch type of player and can make those type of plays. Now, even when Nico was on the field, the defenses will adjust to take away those bombs down the field for the Houston Texans. And that is where when I analyze what helped Houston last year, a big reason why those guys wanted Stephon Diggs back. Because while Nico was taking up everything down the field, Stephon, the savvy vet, understood that I got to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do underneath to keep the drives going, which is why I look at bringing in a Christian Kirk, his third down ability, drafting, again, doubling up on that in Jalen Noel out of Iowa State. Those guys in the front office, I believe, looked at the data and said, well, our offense was hurt here. This is what made our offense bad offensive line play. They cleaned it up, brought in new players, got new coaching. Coaching matters. All coaching lives matter, right? That's number one. New offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, just mentioned, we're going to do what works best for the team and the players on the roster. And again, that's that point right there. When you look at how did Nick Caley have his hands on the draft, well, I think he came in and said, give me everything that worked good for CJ Stroud. Looked at it. Give me everything that worked bad for CJ Stroud. Looked at it and said, well, what would our offense look like if we had two of these guys? What would that look like? Let's try to do that. And then also the simplicity of everything. So I believe Nick Caley's impact would be, we are going to enhance what made CJ Stroud so good. Enhance that ability to where for 5 games in context with Nico Collins, that was 272 yards per play. How the offense failed CJ was throughout the year, they never did a good job of adjusting. The play calling, again, was inept. The offensive line woes were there. Now, with all of that being said, the second half is where I become critical of CJ Stroud and how he hurt the offense. When those defenses made the adjustments, when they took away those bombs downfield, then we saw the Houston Texans offense become stale. So on the other side, when I come back, when Stroud failed the offense, what happened and how can all of those failures from 2024 now be successful moments for the Texans moving forward? Say goodbye to those sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars like Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in a easy to see place, all in one. What would it mean to eliminate I didn't know excuse from your family's routine? Well, your routine will be right there in front of you. How often do plans get missed because they are just buried in a digital calendar or not written down at all? I know for me that happens a lot. Now, using this, it has allowed for me to make my day to day easier. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylight.com, skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal.com/NFL. Welcome back, Locked On Texan fans. Thank you for sticking around and being locked in on the Locked On Texan podcast. Before our next conversation, there's a video from CJ Stroud. I had an opportunity to ask him during the 2024 season about the tempo of the offense and the lack thereof. And so, for context of our next conversation, listen to what CJ Stroud had to say.
CJ, it seems like at times you guys are just able to turn it on, coming out of halftime, 2-3 and outs, but then that final drive, you guys are moving the ball kind of with ease, aside from the penalties that had you guys go backwards. At what point do you start to look at the offense and say, no, we can be so much better if we play with a faster tempo and be able to play our brand of football?
We're playing our brand of football, man. Like we're just because you get 2-3 and out doesn't mean you're having a bad day. I respect what you're saying. I understand. But just because you go tempo don't mean like things just start rolling. Like we tried that weeks prior and we're just getting shells, So, but I do understand where you're coming from. I think, we can, get more of a tempo and get going a little more. And then not even just staying no huddle, really just getting out the huddle, breaking the huddle the right way. All the elite teams I ever watched growing up, Patriots, I watched Stafford a lot with the Rams. I can go so on and so forth. Man, you watch it on TV as a kid, you see how quick they break from the huddle and they get on the line of scrimmage, and the defense feels that. And now you get an opportunity to read the defense a little more, and I think that's where we can take the next level and get better at. But, yeah, I definitely do think we came out a little short out of the second half, but, it's not about, looking down on yourself. It's all about the next play, making the next play the better play. And my team actually helped me doing that, missed a throw in the first half that I know I can make, and I just rushed it. But, they picked me up and came back in the locker room and, just went from there. And, that's one thing about ball. You can't like hang your head down too long because, man, the other team ain't doing that. They trying to get you, So, yeah, but I definitely do understand where you're coming from. But, I feel like, man, we got a lot of good things going on offense, and we got to just clean things up for sure.
The offensive woes through week 18 through 18 weeks in the playoffs could all be wrapped up in two words, and that is timing and rhythm. There were too many times where I'd see CJ Stroud visibly frustrated on the sideline with the tempo of getting to the line, getting the play out, frustrated with dealing with a play clock. 3, 2, 1. There were too many times where I'd see CJ Stroud visibly frustrated with the tempo of the game, just getting out of hand for the Houston Texans, not allowing them to take control when they needed to take control in terms of the tempo of getting to the line, the offensive line, getting the play, frustrated with dealing with a play clock and the play clock about to hit 0 and the play is still not ready. But timing and rhythm played a huge role in the misfires from CJ Stroud late in the year, where I personally put a lot of the shared blame on CJ Stroud's shoulders for his offensive woes. At times I felt he simply didn't have the anticipation on throws that made him a top QB a year prior. So I do want to shout out Texans Jacob, because though I am putting the second half of the year on CJ Stroud, look at in more ways how the offense failed CJ. The Texans offensively ran the second most plays on third and long, 7 or more yards in 2024. Over 88% of those were passes. Of those plays, CJ Stroud was pressured 69 times, the highest in the NFL by 11 pressures, and over 59% pressure rate, also the highest. This was a quarterback that, when you look at like his the mechanics of quarterbacking, I thought coming into his rookie year, I thought CJ Stroud, especially going through the combine process and pro days and everything before the Houston Texans drafted him and just looking at him up close and personal, I thought his mechanics were clean, polished, right? And Gerard Johnson, his quarterback coach, who's been with him since high school, like those two have worked on it. And you saw the impact that Johnson has had on CJ Stroud coming out from Ohio State, now to the Houston Texans. The pressure bust pipes, and it also hurt the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud. All that said, Houston's underneath options need to be better for CJ Stroud, but Stroud has to be better at getting them the ball when they are open. Mechanics from a footwork perspective and base perspective, they were completely off towards the end of the season. I think that's because he was so used to running for his life. CJ Stroud also held on to the ball too long when guys were open. He's just not fitting in the window that he would the rookie year or maybe early in the season. He dealt with not having Stephon Diggs after the Patriot game, I believe, week 7. During that stretch, he dealt with not having Nico Collins. During that stretch, the only move the Houston Texans made to bring in a player, and that wasn't even during that stretch, but throughout the year, was Deontay Johnson, who spent a game here in Houston and was let go after a win due to, I would say, antics in the locker room, maybe. When everybody else was celebrating, that was not necessarily on his mind after a close win, right, where Houston Texans pulled it off. That was the game where Joe Mixon was smoking on the Rex Ryan pack. So, like, Houston didn't do a good job of bringing in veteran players that can help CJ Stroud out. They really leaned on Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie, Robert Woods at times. They leaned on the guys that they had here in the facility, in the NRG stadium, and those guys just didn't bring the same impact as a Nico Collins, as a Stephon Diggs. You look at the high-low guys. That is where the offense really blossomed, when they had the high and low players that just knew how to win in those situations. But then the pressure built it up for Houston, for CJ Stroud. And then the offensive play calling completely broke down. And then Joe Mixon is out. So they're not able to lean on the veteran running back that can make plays in his sleep. How that compiled into hurting CJ Stroud, forcing CJ to want to take those plays and bombs downfield, forcing CJ to hold on to the ball, because I truly believe trust wasn't there with those receivers as much as it was with the Diggs, Tank, and Nico. Those guys, I think, maybe played 2 or 3 games together healthy. Not a lot. And the offenses were completely different. Night and day, from when they were on the field together to when it was just 2 of them, to when it was just 1 of them, to when it was none of them. Like, it was just completely different. And that impacted how CJ led the ball as a quarterback against the Baltimore Ravens, the pressure adding up, getting up to him, the play calling and play design getting to him. Now he's not able to hit Dalton Schultz on the leak out. Piss poor job by Dalton Schultz, piss poor job by the offensive line, piss poor play calling. You also look at a play down the field where Dalton Schultz is streaking on the outside, where maybe you can back shoulder that or put it to where it's only catchable for Dalton Schultz and Dalton Schultz only. But then that's not there because pressure's in his face. And again, the trust to make the throw to Dalton Schultz. All of that built up last year for the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud. Feet not leading to the throw, I think, again, due to the pressure in his face throughout the year. And again, terrible route combos, route concepts where you would see guys at times, multiple times, run the same depth on drag routes, in breaking routes down the field. Who can you run to when you need a catch and Nico's not on the field? CJ Stroud hurt the offense. The offense hurt CJ Stroud. Now this all season, he's been quiet. He's been working. We haven't seen CJ Stroud. He hasn't been on the world tour, right? He's been locked in, playbook, working with Nick Caley. I can't wait to see how that relationship's develop over time. But for the past since February, since Nick Caley was hired, working against bad tendencies for the quarterback, giving him more power, making the play calling and the offense more comfortable to his strengths, reworking against bad blocking, bad assignments, reworking against all of the things that make the offense challenging and bad in 2024. I do think it'll make the offense in 2025 a lot easier, which is why I have swing games like the Kansas City Chiefs. I got the Texans going 12-5. That's not good enough for some people, and I understand that. But I think the Houston Texans can beat the Kansas City Chiefs if the offense is where it needs to be. Now, to close off today's show, what does the RB2 situation looks like? Is that for Dameon Pierce, or is this the year where Houston moves on from Pierce? I hope not. I hope he has a shot. We'll see this training camp season, but we got more to close out today's show. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouts. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Dameon Pierce, talented running back, a running back that I think was hurt due to scheme. I think scheme matters. Some running backs fit more in a system that is tailored to their needs. You look at what made him successful at Florida, where they ran a multi-back set. There was no necessarily true starter, just going north and south. Not a lot of thinking, not a lot of knowing where the zones were, just going where your hole is. And you look at what Cole Popovich will presumably bring to the Houston Texans this season. For Cole, revamping this offensive line, it isn't just necessarily centered around pass blocking. When he was the co-offensive line coach in 2020 with the New England Patriots, 4.7 yards per rush. That was 8th in the NFL, plus 0.04 EPA per rush. That was 5th in the NFL. 47.4 rushing success rate, 2nd in the NFL. 1.7 yards after the contact per attempt, 8th in the NFL. It ain't just about protecting CJ Stroud, right? Like that is the key for Houston. DeMeco Ryans, I remember him saying he cut up clips on when CJ Stroud has time, and even that has declined a little bit this year. But when he has time to throw in the pocket, like he'll make those plays. Cleaning up the offensive line for the quarterback's sake is 100% what Houston needs to do. But if Joe Mixon wasn't just Joe Mixon, like if Joe Mixon wasn't able to make plays out of nothing, then you look at a good chunk of the Texans offense in terms of yards and points taken away from Houston. And that would add to the struggles of this offense, which would have added to the struggles of CJ Stroud. Cole Popovich is also here to influence how they open up gaps and lanes for their running backs. And this is where I think Dameon Pierce would shine. Just going straight to the A gap, just going straight to the B gap. And for this offensive line, it may be the left side B gap. We don't know what right is going to look like right now. Just go to the 3-hole. Once Dameon Pierce gets ahead of steam to the second level, he's incredibly difficult to block. You look at the opportunities that Dameon Pierce got last year, only 40 carries. In multiple games, you see Dameon Pierce with 0 carries. In multiple games, you see Dameon Pierce with only 1 carry, 2 carries. Only 2 times this season did Dameon Pierce get more than 5 carries. Against New England, 8 carries, 76 yards for 1 touchdown. Against the Tennessee Titans to close out the year, 19 carries, 176 yards. Dameon Pierce can still be an impactful and effective runner for the Houston Texans. You can't bury him on a depth chart. You also, for the Houston Texans, and this is the beauty of getting someone from outside in, looking at the vet and thinking to yourself, how can we make sure that he's 100% fresh and a full go for when the playoffs get around? When you look at Joe Mixon, who is undoubtedly the number 1 running back on this roster, it is absolutely the job of this offensive coaching staff to utilize other running backs, especially early in the season. And this is where I think competition will get heated for the Houston Texans in the running back room, because Dameon Pierce, he's a vet now, 4th year in the NFL, right? He was not drafted by the previous regime in terms of coaching staff, but Nick Caserio's still here. They have not looked to move on from him yet. That could be a preseason decision. But because of the competition that we'll see this year, I believe that Dameon Pierce should be at least the RB3. I think he brings more to the Houston Texans as a running back. When you look at what made Dare Ungabowale, what was nice for him last season, his ability to catch out of the backfield and block out of the backfield. Well, Woody Marks should be able to take over that role in terms of catching out of the backfield. And I think year 4 for Dameon Pierce does look like a better year blocking out of the backfield. Woody Marks, that was also something that I thought was a strength of his. The running back group isn't getting talked about a lot because Joe Mixon is the number 1 guy. You don't typically see a lot of 2-back sets in the NFL unless it's a fullback. But they got to find a way to spell Joe Mixon from all of those carries. And a lot of carries last year, especially in those games where the offense from a passing perspective wasn't working for Houston. That is where Superman Joe came into play, and he made plays time and time again. But Dameon Pierce's path to success isn't east and west. It is north to south. Those opportunities will be there for Houston and Dameon Pierce this year. And I want you guys to look at it like this. If you ever get some time, just go watch Ramondre Stevenson. I think Ramondre has a little bit better footwork, but they're essentially the same type of back. The same type of back where you want them running full steam ahead. And that is where Dameon Pierce will be successful. That is where he's been successful. That is how the Houston Texans can look at their back and say to themselves, how can we utilize a talented player? Let's not get him out of the norm. Let's not make things difficult on him. When it's his time to get in the game, let's make it to where what we are asking of him are the things that were asked of him before that made him successful. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Also follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Until next time, Texas fans all around, peace. Let's enjoy the week.